Well, thank you, and appreciate the introduction about e-commerce, and I love talking about the hangover of e-commerce because um, we are Reverse Logistics Association, and I've been the executive director here now for about 4 or 5 years. But I was on the board from the beginning in 2002, 2003, and when I was at Philips, I was at Philips for 25 years. And one day they took a happy sales and marketing guy and said, go fix the returns problem. And that's what I needed to learn how to do. And I did. So I've shared best practices over the years. And when I took over the association, we expanded the advisory board to some very major global companies that help run the RLA. We also expanded membership, and we are easy to find at rla.org. And I'm going to share the screen now. Dan, everyone can read that. It's large enough.
Yes, sir. Looking good.
All right. So that's my introduction. I've already done some of it, but we're going to talk about the e-commerce hangover, reverse logistics, and returns. There's my information for you. We can make this deck available through GLT for you at any time. We're Atlanta-based, and we focus. We're a global trade group for members, and the members are companies like those on the line. The member companies are retailers and manufacturers, who are the people who have returns problems, as well as the third-party solutions partners or service providers, 3PSPs, we call them in our space. And what happens is the e-commerce hangover is related to the fact that if you make it easy for people to shop online, they will, and then they will return a lot of it. If you don't know the numbers, I'm always glad to share numbers. They're important. The numbers are somewhere around 3 to 4 times the rate of returns in actual stores for many product categories. So e-commerce returns can average 25 to 35% of sales. Why? Because there's a ticking time bomb in multi-channel retailing. The time bomb is that shoppers consider returns a very important part of the e-commerce experience. They think the process is complicated, so they want it simple. They think it's inconvenient to drop off a product. They don't want to ever pay for the return. Some of them are guilty. 25% of them appear to be guilty of doing a lot of returns multiple times. They don't mind a post office. They would love a delivery company to collect it. They don't mind returning it to a store, or they'll return it to a convenience store. And we know about Whole Foods markets and Kohl's and places like that to drop off returns. But 83% of the consumers say they'll shop more at a retailer that makes the returns process easier. So what's happened is returns have become a competitive sledgehammer. Literally, a competitive sledgehammer. You have to do a good job in it. You have to offer it. You have to make it easy and free, or they will shop elsewhere. Now, the consumer behavior is shifting. E-commerce is growing, and the last year has shown where it was growing 10 to 15%, it exploded last year to over 20% of the growth, and also it exceeded 600 billion, but you are looking at a 20 to 30% return rate. And some of that is getting the numbers mixed up because brick and mortar are shifting to omni-channel. And what that means is the buyers love the no hassle cross-channel return policies. They want it as simple as, I don't care what I bought from you on your site, I want to take it back, drop it off, have you pick it up. I want you to do everything that I want to do because we are a culture of entitlement in this country. Unlike some of the rest of the world, but we now have things like BOPUS and BORUS. And I love acronyms and I love sharing them. And if you don't know, buy online, pick up in store is the BOPUS acronym. Buy online, return in store is the BORUS acronym. And that's becoming a big deal because brick and mortar have the opportunity to save the sale when the customer brings something back in. E-commerce drop-offs at a FedEx, UPS, Walgreens, all those stores are no opportunity for saving a sale. But Home Depot, Walmart, other retailers, Target, if you take it back to the store, good chance that they can help you, or they can help you find something else, or you might go buy something else. So there's a lot of change going on with the consumer behavior. And of course, the last year has been really challenging because frankly, retailers extended their return windows. They didn't want you to bring things back for a while because nobody knew, would the box hold the virus? Would clothes that are being returned hold the virus? Electronics, if you touch them and you have COVID, was the virus transmitted through that type of situation? And we've discovered probably not. By and large, it looks like not. But the retailers in the United States and much of North America have enabled this returns mentality. Again, it's a competitive sledgehammer, but omni-channel has created more complexity on the reverse side. Very complicated. If Best Buy and Walmart are selling products on their website that they don't carry in the stores, and you take it back to the stores become a warehouse for products that they don't sell. It's quite challenging for retailers. And but returns on average represent about 8% of total sales in North America that we know of. And I'll give you more numbers. Let's call it 6%, or I mean 6 trillion in retail sales in North America last year. You take 8% of that, you're somewhere in the 400 to 500 billion range of returns. That's bigger than Walmart or Amazon or any retailer in the world. So it's a lot of product coming back, and the expenses can range from 7 to 11% of the cost of goods sold. Nowadays, there's less product going back to the manufacturers. They're giving allowances to the retailers and saying, you liquidate it. And there's some dangerous aspects about that. But we've developed more robust alternative channels. You can take it back to the store. What can the stores do with it? Sometimes they can salvage it. Sometimes they can donate it. Sometimes they can resell it, like Nordstrom Rack and other retailers like that. And sometimes you can recycle and do other things. Now, return strategies. How can you reduce some of the transactional and logistical burdens? An important aspect that I learned at Philips, and I was there for 25 years. As I said, they took me out of sales and marketing and said, go figure out returns. Well, returns, there's no good end-to-end analysis at most companies about returns. And this is important because companies are starting to talk about and thinking about becoming circular economy companies. Again, my old home, Philips, is part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the founders of the circular economy concept. But when I was at Philips, the sales are easy. You sell something to a retailer, when you bill them, the invoice, that's said and done. It's one transaction. On the reverse side, as soon as a customer leaves the store with the product, the packaging is a reverse logistics space, because if it's hazardous, if it's not, and hazardous clamshells, remember those? They used to cut people's fingers and arms and wind up in a hospital room. We learned about getting rid of clamshells quickly after getting feedback. That's where I lived, in the reverse return space. What's going on? People would call centers. People wanted their products picked up. They wanted them repaired. They hated them. They bought something bigger, something smaller, and they returned 2 of the 3 items that they bought. You have to do an end-to-end analysis if you are a manufacturer. You have to look at every touch point, because there's many more touch points. And many of you are logistics companies, and you may only look at the one aspect. Well, we'll pick up a load of returns at a Target return center or Walmart, and we'll take it back to where they want it to go. But it's going to be touching a lot of different points, not only the front of the store, the back of the store, the sortation, loading on a truck. It goes to a location where it's desorted, dispositioned, directed either to be sent back to the manufacturers in some cases, or liquidated. And liquidation occurs, and then they ship it out. So there's a lot of touch points, probably double the touch points that are in the forward logistics. The understanding I have from the academics, forward logistics from factory to the consumer might have up to 7 touch points. The reverse space might be as many as 30 different touch points for those returns. Every touch point is a cost. So doing that analysis of those end-to-end costs is critical. Another aspect is, Where do returns belong in an organization? If you're a logistics company and you want to do business with more manufacturers and more retailers, if you pick up the phone and call a company and ask who's in charge of returns, 9 times out of 10, they don't know the answer. Or ask them, what do you do with those returns? Again, they don't know the answer. And so there's important analysis and also finding out who owns the returns and the reverse logistics space. A lot of times it falls into supply chain, but it does not belong there because these goods coming back look nothing like the goods that are going forward, as you can imagine. Take the example of Home Depot, my friends there, some of our board member companies. The ceiling fans that people buy in the store come in a nice package box that came to the store on a nice pallet, wrapped tight, came out of the factory nice and tight. And when a customer gets it home and they take it out of the box and they look at it and they say, oh my God, this is ugly, it won't go in this room, or whatever factor they decide, I don't want this anymore, and they take it back, do they ever put it back in the box like it came out? No. And so the nightmare of a return, just think of a ceiling fan. It's now being loaded into a returns pallet, being unloaded at a return center, going down a conveyor belt where it will begin to knock things off the shelves as it's going down that conveyor, especially those 52-inch blades and bigger. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Returns, you have an opportunity in returns to become a hero at your company. And I was fortunate to do that. We worked with major retailers and we did these analyses and we took it out of service and we crossed over silos to say, how can we make the customer experience better? How can we make the product better? That's first and foremost. But on the side of the fence that most of us live, especially in the logistics world, it's a question of how can I make it cost effective to bring the returns back to one place? Can a logistics provider work with me to help disposition the goods at a return center? So, success stories, just to let you know, there are some, and these are easy to share. At Philips, for example, we were able to get the major retailers to capture the serial number at the point of sale. Now, why is that important? Well, a DVD player or a TV is sold at many different locations and different prices and so on. So consumers have been known to buy a product at one place. They don't like it. They take it home for the Super Bowl and they take it back a week later. And if the retailer doesn't know it, they didn't sell it, then they're giving a refund for a product they never sold. So we implemented serial number registration. So at the returns desk, they capture the serial number, review it, and say, and get a receipt. And they say, I'm sorry, but you bought this at retailer ABC a month ago. You didn't buy it from us, so we can't give you a refund. That's the police action that you can take. The LG approach is something that applies to many of you who are logistics providers for major appliances and large products that have to be delivered, furniture and so on. What LG did as a test is they would call the customers ahead of the delivery and they would ask them to please take out a tape measure and double check the door widths and the stair turns and so on. Not easy to do, but they found that it cut the returns dramatically and the re-delivery things that had to happen because they couldn't get the products in the door. Or when they got it in the door and they pulled it up the stairs, they'd scratch the side of it. And now suddenly you're the customer in the house and you see that being scratched and you're like, I don't want this anymore. And there's a double nightmare. But then LG empowered their agents to take an emergency phone call from the delivery man, delivery woman, delivery person at that home and say, we've scratched the side of this appliance, dishwasher, a washer, dryer, refrigerator. And then the call center agent would talk to the customer and say, we'll give you a partial credit if you'll keep it. And the credit was calculated financially of the cost of bringing that back to the warehouse, redelivering another one. So it could be up to $100 to $150 for a reduction on a washer or dryer. And it worked dramatically. So again, as logistics providers, it's your duty to talk to your partners and your companies that you are shipping for and delivering for to talk about that. I mentioned Jarden as another case study, true success, because Jarden is the owner of Mr. Coffee and Margaritaville blenders and Oster products, and they were destroying those products in the field, which meant they were really being liquidated to flea markets and places like that. They made a decision, bring everything back, refurbish it, and they sold it into the secondary market. And if you're not familiar with the secondary market in this country and elsewhere, you should be. It's not just eBay or Craigslist. Retailers like Big Lots and the bargain outlet stores and many other chains and independent stores are opportunities and marketplaces for these products to be sold at a discount without destroying the brand name. So some success stories that you can think about, share, very costly learnings. I mentioned the bracketing already. Uh, Online has created all of these problems because you don't get to try something on in e-commerce. You need to get it home. So you're ordering extras just to make sure you get one that fits. You're ordering colors that you're not sure. It says it's Kelly green, but when it gets to you, maybe it's more of a pastel green. And so colors are important to have as big a spot on the description and so on. So these are learnings that we've shared with many companies, trying to get them to know there's ways to do things. Using a model in an ad and online is a mistake because you get the clothing or anything home and you put it on and you look in a mirror and you say it looked better on the model and you send it back. Things like that happen. Interconnectivity, ease of use are critical for electronics. The last product in is always the first one to go back. If it doesn't, easily connect to your computer and work so you can see the pictures you've taken and things like that. There are standards, but they're not always universally applied in electronics, just like in clothing. A large in one manufacturer is different from other manufacturers. There's all those nightmares going on. So we talk about the next few years because returns are just going to continue to grow. I make jokes about my job at Philips was to work myself out of a job by reducing returns and bringing them down to zero. Well, you never bring them down to zero, but I did work myself out of a job because we went from a 12% returns rate for a $2 billion electronics company. We got it down below 4% by the time I'd worked my magic over a few years. And there's magic out there. So e-commerce will continue to grow with a high percentage. We're not sure if this year, 2021, will be as fast a growth as last year, but it is estimated to be a greater than $1 trillion retail marketplace by 2025. So the retailers and the customers are going to have to figure out the hassle-free returns. They're going to be more demanding. Manufacturers are going to try to limit their liabilities. They don't want to take all these things back. They know it gets damaged on the way. Regulations are going to become more onerous. They're going to become much harder to deal with. There's no regulations today, for example, on furniture. It can come back, or some clothing. It can come back and be put back on a shelf as new, even though it potentially was worn. And that's a nightmare. Expenses, of course, continue to grow with the demand for warehouse space and for labor shortages in the last year. All those costs have gone up. So everything points to increased expenses and costs in returns processing. So again, if you can do anything to reduce them, you can be a hero. But if you can't, and you're working on, you can grow the secondary market. You can work with stores that are shifting to omni-channel. Brands like Patagonia, even Nike, Adidas, North Face. These are big clothing and shoe brands who are now taking things back from customers and reselling them on the secondary marketplaces that they've created on their own websites. It's a great opportunity and it's a great idea. And we do hope and expect that the Nikes and the Adidas and North Face, Columbia, Patagonia, they'll be a lot more careful about those returns. They will probably call it pre-certified like the auto industry does. Pre-certified, pre-tested, pre-owned luxury, and find a way to get you to consider buying it. And again, just to repeat that the buyers expect this in the future. Also, in the next 5 years, you're going to see growth in the marketplace, expansion of outlet stores, and new stores. The outlet malls continue to be a strong marketplace retail for companies like Levi Strauss and even brands like Kate Spade and others. They all set up these outlet stores to liquidate those things that come back, and that's a good thing. It's better than getting caught burning it in fields like certain prestigious name brands. I'll leave them alone for today. So the outlet stores are growing. The value stores, the big lots, the dirt cheap, and so on. And then there's trade-in sites on the web. So there's a lot of this growth going on, trade in, trade up. And fortunately, a lot of it leads to a discussion about being green, being circular, so that instead of throwing these things into landfill, you are given an opportunity to reuse them and return them to the economy and to people at a value. As a logistics company, many of you are, you need to look at being able to expand the offerings. Manufacturers and retailers now need companies who do more than just move the product, move the returns. And it's a misnomer to call it just reverse logistics. It's really about returns management. Many of you, for example, may have the experience of helping mattress in a box companies deliver their products. And mattress in a box is the new nightmare because they use massive amounts of pressure to close it into this tube or box. It gets to the customer, they open it, they need a couple of days just to let it unfold and settle up. And then they look at it and they test it and decide they don't like it. And imagine the returns nightmare with those kinds of mattress in a box products. So if a logistics provider can say to a manufacturer or retailer, hey, we have a facility, we can hold it for you until you decide what you want to do with it. Or logistics companies can develop in their warehouses opportunities for liquidation. They can make partnerships with local companies to pick it up, to liquidate it, to recycle it, and so on, or even to donate it. So there's a lot of opportunities, and the wider the logistics companies will start to look at solutions, being a solutions provider, the more business they'll get a chance to do. I won't focus on this as much from the manufacturer and the retailer side. You do want to think about things like the out-of-box experience. There's human factor engineers, and net promoter score needs to be higher and higher. You as a consumer have opportunities now to sell things on eBay, the Amazon Marketplace, Craigslist. That's growing. Garage sales, pawn shops, because some companies are doing a financial analysis and saying, you know what, we'll just tell you as a customer to keep the product, we'll give you a refund. That opens up a wild, wild west nightmare, but people are taking advantage of it, and then they move the things through the pawn shops or garage sales and so on. Make a difference. This is an important slide for all of you listening. Find out who owns the reverse logistics functions, who owns it in your company, who owns it in your partners, the companies you're doing business with. Finding out, and if no one owns it, that's an opportunity, because if you find an owner in your own company or other companies, there is so much room for saving money. Now, on the forward side, you try to save nickels and pennies and dimes for your clients and for your customers. And that's about all you can save, because supply chain has gotten very sophisticated. There's some great educational programs out there, and they've narrowed it down, and best practices are shared and rapidly copied. On the reverse side, the marketplace is so big. Again, remember that number, 450 billion in returns to be processed. Whoever owns it at a company has an opportunity to become a hero, make a difference, help your company save money. You have to learn about measurements. You have to find the very specialized tools that are out there. You have to find out where is it absorbed in other departments and bring out the end-to-end analysis, because it's critical. And finally, someone needs to become an expert on all the things you can do with the returns. And they're listed there. It's a mnemonic with the reduce, reuse, refurbish. I had to learn all of this at Philips. But in the end, if you did the math, when returns were 12% and almost approaching $200 million, and I took it down to about a $40 to $50 million range, I was one of the last people standing at Phillips. So you have an opportunity, and you know what else? You get to be a good steward. You get to be a good citizen of planet Earth, because we're saving the landfills. We're reducing what happens there. And the opportunity is to reduce costs in the bottom line by 3 to 15% in almost any company. All right, I ran through that quickly. I hope I'm within the window. Dan, any questions you want to throw at me or that you saw come through?
Yes, sir, Tony. Thank you. Very well done. Very informative and very interesting. Thank you. And last time we spoke, I mentioned that there's a picture of my wife in the UPS store for returns, and I just can't understand. Like, for instance, Amazon, they'll accept packaging at a UPS store if the item not packaged, and they'll package it for you.
Yes, they pay for that.
It's incredible.
It is. Now the financial wizards, Dan, are the ones who are saying, you know what, X% of the products that a customer packs himself and returns come back to us destroyed. So we ought to pay for it because it'll offset it. I'm not sure the financial wizards are always wizards, but that's the number they came up with. And they said it's cheaper for us to tell someone to drop it off. And I've done this, right? You've done it at Whole Foods. I drop off an Amazon package and I had a box, and they're like, would you please take this box back with you? It's like, really? You don't want the box even? Okay, fine. So it's a little scary that the financial wizards are trying to run that show, but it really comes to that emphasis I put on that customer experience. You are trying to make the return hassle-free and easier. And in the process, you're making it so simple that they're just going to keep returning more and more stuff. They're going to be like, I'll order 10 of these because if I keep 2, I'll send the rest back.
Exactly.
That's the culture.
Exactly right. And that's what, and my wife will only shop online with companies that will take free returns.
Free returns, exactly. So,
and to your point earlier too, we had bought something for our house, a nice brand new $400 sink, not sink, the faucet,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
And she didn't like it. So she went to return it. They said, don't worry about it, keep it. And I'm like, a $400 faucet? First of all, I can't believe she spent $400 on a faucet, but $400 faucet, and they said, keep it. Incredible. It's just incredible. And then one last thing, you mentioned the mattress in the box thing. And that the same thing goes with carpets. Again, I'm going to use my wife as an example. She's going to hate me for this, but we bought a carpet online, brought it home, laid it out, let it flatten, made it look great. And she didn't like it. So we had to roll it up again. And of course, it's larger going back. So it's going to take up more room. And of course, we didn't package it right, bringing it back to the store. So you're right. Reverse logistics, it's a moneymaker, but it's also something that it's a money loser.
Yes. And it's an opportunity for all those people in the logistics space to really grow the business and become heroes to any of the companies you're working with or working for. I can't emphasize that enough. And Dan, I keep on it because it's absolutely true. So thank you for GLT for letting me preach a little more.
Well, we have more questions for you.
Oh, go ahead.
We have questions from the audience, and Sharon is going to actually take over from now. Sharon, after you. The floor is yours.
Okay, yeah. Here are some of the questions we are receiving right now in our chat box. I think some of them has been answered already, but let's go for it. So Anne is asking, how do we define return policies? In some cases, the customers just don't want it anymore as soon as they see it.
Return policies are important, and I've encouraged and I've seen changes. In fact, my wife, Dan's got good stories, but my wife holds me responsible for Target changing their unlimited returns policy to a 90-day window, and you had to have a receipt. She hated me for that, but they knew that they had to do that because of the potential fraud that was occurring. So generally, stores now will go back to a 90-day window after the purchase. Generally, they do try to look at the product and make sure you're returning what you bought in the condition you bought it in. So there's some pushback now, which didn't exist 10 years or 20 years ago. That pushback is occurring because they recognize they're getting cheated. Because ultimately, if they take back a product that's broken and they try to send it to the manufacturer broken, they're not going to get credit. And ultimately, all of this will cost the consumers more, because those costs have to be absorbed somewhere, and they have to raise prices. And we are a competitive marketplace, but returns ultimately affects your price. So return policies are flexible to some degree, but versus 10 years ago, they have become a bit more strict. Now, during the pandemic, Sharon, just to add, as I said, they did extend the windows because nobody knew about the virus. But now we're seeing it go back to about a 90-day window at the most, 30 days in some products in some areas. Does that answer?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Okay.
90 days is more than enough to return a product. So
It is.
well said, my friend. Okay, I have here, how can logistics companies partner up with retailers to help them smooth the return situation with the customers?
Well, we've answered some of it. It's important about communication. That's probably the most important aspect for logistics companies to consider. I know you focus on it on the forward side. You start doing things like text to customer, we are an hour away. Do the same thing in the reverse space. People want things picked up. So if a logistics provider can find a way to be cost efficient for retailers and manufacturers, you need to propose to them ideas like that, hey, we're delivering already into these neighborhoods. We can pick up at the same time for those extra special customers. And retailers need to learn how, if you have a customer buying a $5,000 furniture outfit, bedroom outfit, you can't just tell them to bring it back. You need to go arrange a pickup of that stuff. And so those are relationships that have to be built, and have to be built on the trust that you as a logistics provider, number one, your people are going to be extra careful about, the same as when they deliver. They need to be wearing uniforms and padded over their feet and gloves and everything else. They need to do the same thing on the reverse side, or else it will give a lower customer satisfaction. And those are the people who write on Facebook and on websites and say, you know, that furniture company just picked up my outfit, and those people bang things around and everything. I mean, those are the terrorists.
Yeah.
They're very vocal. And to the point of net promoter score, they're a lot more vocal if they're unhappy than if they're happy. It's rare that they're happy and they go on Facebook and write about how great you are. But if they're unhappy, they're all over it, right? So
That is true.
So develop those partnerships and deliver an experience that the customers love and they write about.
That is correct. Tony, it says here, how can I reduce cost with return policy without to affect service quality? How can I reduce cost with return policy without to affect service quality?
Well, I think that's in the area of service. We're talking about customer service, and customer service on the returns and reverse side is way more important even than the forward side. So if you're a logistics provider, again, what we just said about exactly the same as you deliver it is how you pick it up. Be there on time. Give the customer a warning of when you're going to be there. These are ways you can't necessarily reduce their costs, except in cases where if you are just as careful with the pickup as you are with the delivery, then the products that you're picking up have a higher recovery value. If they're scratched or broken by your people on a pickup, you've destroyed value of the product, and you can't recover that. You can recover more if the product looks like new, or it at least looks like the way you delivered it. So that's a value add that logistics providers can do in terms of other ways, and that can save costs if you can show statistics say, hey, last year 2% of the things we picked up were damaged badly. This year, only 1%. I mean, things like that. Those are real measurements. But then part two is we know that your cost to take everything back to the factory are X. How about if you leave it here? We'll store it for you at a special rate and we'll help find a local company to liquidate. It's all about the math. So can you as a logistics provider help save them money versus what they're doing today? And that involves understanding what those costs are, which again, logistics providers can get into that. You're reducing touch points. You're making the product available in a local center to local companies who can pick it up. That's also saving them money. So there's ways like that that you can, as a service provider, offer them savings, real money, and improve your services to their customer and save them good ratings and so on. Those are all some intangibles, but some very tangible numbers there.
Those are great tips. Okay, considering free returns and damaged goods, what are large retailers usually doing with the returned product?
Well, I talk about the if the returns are a werewolf, there's no one silver bullet that's going to do it all. So retailers do many things with it. Many retailers, the major nationals, they don't want used products in their stores. But products that are in packages, they will sometimes put it back on the shelf. I've seen it at Target. Maybe you have too. Targets and Best Buys where it's stapled and a little tag over it. And instead of $25, it's $20. So that's a small way to make a difference in the store. But stores that sell new goods like to look clean and they don't like those return goods in there. Again, it depends on the type of retailer you are. So the first line of defense is they send it to a centralized returns processing place. That is either their own company, like Target might have their own return centers and Walmart, but some companies don't have their own return centers. So they have a third-party partnership. And those third-party partnerships take the returns in a truckload or in pallet loads. And it can be everything from toilet paper to dog food to electronics. And they will separate those products out, make them available for liquidation sale, collect higher money for it, and give that money back on a revenue share basis to the retailer. So that's another aspect of what do retailers return with it. Retailers are happy if they can send it back to the factories, the manufacturer. And manufacturers who want to protect their brands like Philips did, like Samsung, they want their stuff back with their name on it because they don't want it to go to flea markets or eBay with their name on it sometimes. So as misrepresented. So some retailers choose to send it back, some liquidate. I like the ones like Nordstrom Rack I mentioned, where they set up a separate channel of stores and they take all their returns and they put them in there. And you can go to Nordstrom Rack and get some great deals, on some really great clothing. So there are many silver bullets. Donation is a great one. We have gone through a very difficult year in this country. A lot of people are hurting. So when there's donations that can be made, it's good for the company, it can be good for the retailer, and it's good for the manufacturer. So sometimes, back to Dan's story about the faucet people, maybe they should be talking about donating it to Habitat for Humanity and get a lot of coverage out of it, right?
Oh, well, I'm actually donating it to a friend of mine.
Well, we'll give you a little credit, Dan, but isn't it better if the retailer gets some credit and makes some noise about it? So those are some of the silver bullets that I refer to, different ways you can find a solution for those returns as a retailer and look good.
Great.
Thank
Tony.
you, Tony.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. We are running out of time, but thank you so much. It has been really insightful, and we hope you can join us in the future because your tips are very interesting. And that's it. Thank you so much, Tony.
Sharon and Dan, thank you. And I cannot wait until we all get to be back together in person and shake hands and perhaps have a little drink together or something. I'm looking forward to it. I hope to see that this fall. So again, thank you.